I stood under the drizzle, my bridesmaid dress clinging to my legs, mascara running down my cheeks. Through the glass doors, I could see my parents laughing and dancing with my sister, my perfect sister, in the very ballroom I helped pay for. The music pulsed like a heartbeat I no longer belonged to. 2 security guards had just walked me out, saying, "Your mother asked us to escort you off the premises." My mother, the woman who lived in the house I bought, the woman whose bills I paid, every single one from electricity to her medication. They said I was embarrassing the family, that I was a freeloader. I wanted to scream the truth, but my throat locked up. I just stood there, soaked and shivering, watching them celebrate while I disappeared from their lives like a ghost. The street outside the Blue Magnolia Hotel shimmered with rain and golden light. I could still hear the laughter echoing from the ballroom, muffled but sharp enough to sting. My phone buzzed Mia's voice message. "Lauren, Mom says you're making things awkward. Please just go home. This is my day." Her tone was sweet but cold, the kind that came wrapped in privilege. I deleted the message before it finished. 5 hours earlier, I'd been the one tying ribbons on her wedding favors, making sure every candle matched her color palette. I'd been up since dawn, handling chaos, so she could look perfect. That was what I always did. Clean up, pay up, and shut up. When she forgot her earrings, I drove across town to get them. When Dad's tux didn't fit, I covered the alteration fee. I did it all because family was supposed to mean something, but tonight proved it didn't mean a damn thing. Inside, I caught a glimpse of my mother Donna through the window. She was radiant in navy silk, holding a champagne flute, her smile wide and proud. I saw her lean toward a guest, gesturing toward me just before I'd been kicked out. I knew that look. It was the same one she used when she pretended I wasn't part of her success story. The unmarried accountant daughter who didn't have a husband or kids, who helped around but never quite measured up. I could almost hear her laugh in that polite, pitying tone. "Lauren's good with numbers, bless her heart. She helps us manage things at home." As if I didn't work 80-hour weeks to keep her lights on. As if I wasn't the reason that house on Willow Creek Lane even existed. Ethan, the groom, had barely looked at me all evening. The one time he did it was when I accidentally walked into a photo frame while helping Mia fix her veil. He whispered something to her, and she smiled awkwardly, eyes darting to Mom. Minutes later, Mom's hand clamped on my wrist. "Don't make a scene," she hissed, dragging me toward the hall. "You've had enough wine. Go home." "I'm fine," I whispered back. Her expression hardened. "You're not. You're upsetting people. I can't let you ruin this." Then, before I could respond, 2 hotel security guards appeared beside us. She looked them straight in the eyes and said, "Please escort my daughter out." The words sliced through me like glass. Now, standing outside, I replayed that moment. Again and again. The shame, the disbelief, the way everyone turned their eyes away, pretending not to see me being dragged out. My heels sank into the wet pavement. I took them off and threw them into the back seat of my car. I sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles whitened. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked nothing like me, just a broken version of someone who'd given everything and been thrown away. "Fine," I whispered. "You want me gone. You got it." I opened my banking app. One by one, I scrolled through the list of automatic payments: electricity, water, internet, property tax, health insurance, phone bills. Over $2,500 every month. Every single one linked to their house. The house I bought when Mom lost her job and Dad's pension got cut. The house they now pretended was theirs. My thumb hovered for a second. Then I hit cancel payment. Electricity gone. Gas gone. Internet gone. Every click felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I sent one last text to Mom. "You won't have to worry about me anymore. Or my money." I didn't wait for her reply. I knew it would come laced with guilt and denial, maybe even anger. But this time, I wasn't her safety net. The rain picked up, drumming against the windshield as I drove aimlessly through the quiet streets. The city looked ghostly under the lamplight, familiar but foreign. I thought about the years I spent grinding at the office, skipping vacations, putting away bonuses for their comfort. I thought about the nights I came home to them arguing, and Mom would sigh, "Lauren, you'll understand one day, when you have a family of your own." But now I understood perfectly. Family wasn't supposed to drain you dry. My phone vibrated again, another message from Mia. I ignored it. Instead, I pulled over at Mirror Lake, the same spot Dad used to take us fishing when we were kids. The water rippled under the moonlight, calm and uncaring. I rolled down the window, inhaling the smell of wet pine and regret. That was when the email notification popped up. Blue Ridge National Bank. Title transfer request approved. My heart skipped. I clicked it open. "Dear Miss Brooks," it read. "This email confirms that the title transfer request for property at 611 Willow Creek Lane has been approved and is under review for final authorization." Title transfer. My property. I blinked at the screen. It had to be a mistake. I hadn't requested any transfer. My name was on the deed. I remembered signing every paper when I bought it. Panic crawled up my spine. I tried to call the bank, but it was after hours. The voicemail repeated a robotic greeting. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the black screen of my phone. They wouldn't. They couldn't. And yet deep down something told me they already had. The rain stopped. The world went still, as if holding its breath. I thought I'd only been humiliated at my sister's wedding, but as I sat there in the dark watching the notification glow on my screen, I realized something far worse was unfolding. They weren't just trying to erase me from their celebration. They were trying to erase me from my own life. The morning after the wedding felt unreal. My dress lay crumpled in the corner, streaked with mud and mascara, like a physical reminder of everything I'd lost in one night. My apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. The silence was heavy, suffocating. I sat on the couch, still wearing yesterday's makeup, staring at the half-empty wine glass I'd poured after I got home. It tasted like bitterness and shame. I thought winning the argument in my head would help, but no amount of self-defense could erase what I saw last night, my own parents laughing while I stood outside in the rain, barred from the celebration I'd helped pay for. I replayed their words over and over. Freeloader. Embarrassment. They said it so easily, like I wasn't their daughter but some stranger who'd crashed their perfect event. My phone buzzed with messages, friends asking if I was okay, coworkers saying they saw the photos online. The humiliation spread faster than the truth ever could. I turned it off. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted answers. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. The house, the bills, the endless sacrifices. I paid for everything because I believed family meant taking care of each other. I never asked for recognition, but I didn't expect betrayal either. My parents didn't just kick me out of a wedding, they'd erased me from my own life. By the time the sun began to rise, I'd made up my mind. I needed to see them. I needed to face the people who had turned me into an outsider. The drive to 611 Willow Creek Lane was quiet and familiar. I'd driven this road hundreds of times before, but today it felt different. The trees seemed taller, the shadows sharper. When the house finally came into view, I almost didn't recognize it. The porch had been repainted, the garden trimmed. It looked like a postcard version of home, perfect, polished, and soulless. What hit me hardest was the mailbox. A shiny new nameplate glinted in the morning light, George and Donna Brooks. My name, the one that paid for that property, was gone. I parked by the curb and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My keys still hung from my keychain. For a second, I wondered if they'd changed the locks too. But when I tried, the key slid in smoothly, and the door opened with a familiar click. Inside, everything looked the same but different. My framed college photo had been replaced with one of Mia and her new husband. The couch I bought was still there, but the throw pillows had been changed. My mother's voice drifted from the kitchen, calm and casual, like it was just another morning. When she turned and saw me, her expression tightened. "Lauren," she said, lowering her phone. "What are you doing here?" I stepped forward, keeping my voice steady. "This is my house. I thought I'd check on the people living in it." Her face hardened. "You don't need to be dramatic. After last night, I thought you'd give everyone some space." Space, I laughed bitterly. "You humiliated me in front of 100 people and called security on your own daughter. You think I need space, you need a conscience." Before she could respond, my father walked in, coffee mug in hand. He froze when he saw me. "Lauren," he said cautiously, "we don't want another scene." "You mean the kind where you pretend I don't exist?" I shot back. He sighed. "You're upset. Let's all calm down." I took a deep breath and placed my phone on the counter. "Fine. Then, explain this." I opened the email from Blue Ridge Bank and slid it across the table. "Why is there a title transfer request on the house I bought?" They exchanged glances, too quick, too telling. My mother's voice dropped. "That must be some mistake." I leaned closer. "Then why are your names on the mailbox? Why did you call me a freeloader when I've been paying every single one of your bills?" My father's jaw tightened. "Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. You've been generous, yes, but that doesn't mean you own us." "You're right," I said, my voice shaking. "I just own the house you live in." For a moment, no one spoke. My mother finally said, "You hardly ever come by. It's not like you live here anymore." "I stopped coming because every time I did, you made sure I felt unwelcome," I said. "You replaced my photos. You acted like I was a tenant instead of your daughter." She looked away, muttering, "We just wanted a normal life, Lauren. You make everything about money. That did it." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder filled with receipts. "You want to talk about money here? Every utility bill, every tax payment, your car insurance, your prescriptions. Over $2,500 a month for 5 years. I slammed it onto the table. "That's not normal. That's exploitation." My father rubbed his temples. "You make it sound like we forced you." I laughed without humor. "You didn't have to. You used guilt instead. You knew I'd say yes every time because I thought love meant sacrifice." My mother's tone softened for a moment. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We just didn't want to lose the house." "Then why forge my signature?" I snapped. "Why risk everything?" Her silence was my answer. The anger inside me burned hotter, but underneath it was something worse: disappointment. I realized that all the years I spent proving my worth meant nothing to them. They didn't see me as their daughter anymore. They saw me as a wallet with feelings they didn't have to care about. "I'm done," I said quietly. "I canceled every bill this morning. The lights, the gas, the water, all of it," my mother gasped. "Lauren, you can't just—" "I can," I said sharply. "You wanted me gone. Now you'll see what life without me looks like." The sound of my heels echoed against the tile as I turned toward the door. My father's voice followed me. "You're making a big mistake." I stopped in the doorway. The mistake was thinking family couldn't betray you. Outside, the sky had turned gray. I walked to my car, my hands trembling but my chest strangely light. For the first time, I felt control. The kind of control that comes from finally choosing yourself. As I drove away, the rain began again, soft at first, then harder. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, but I didn't look. I knew it was them, angry and panicking. I let it ring. Halfway down the street, I pulled over. My mind was still replaying every word, every expression. I opened my laptop, connected to my bank portal, and sent a request to Blue Ridge National Bank for the full copy of the title transfer documents. If they thought they could quietly steal my house, I'd make sure they regretted it. By the time I reached downtown, my phone buzzed again, a new message, this time from the bank. It was short and formal, "Miss Brooks, we have received additional documents regarding your property transfer. You will receive a full file within 24 hours. I read it twice. Additional documents. Someone had gone through a lot of effort to make it look official. The weight of it all hit me at once. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was fraud. As I parked outside my apartment, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me wasn't the obedient daughter anymore. She was someone different, angrier, stronger, colder. I whispered to her, "They want to play games with my life." Fine, let's see who wins. The city lights blurred behind me as I closed the laptop. Somewhere deep inside, between the fear and the fury, a new kind of calm began to settle, a dangerous one. I knew what came next. They thought I'd walk away quietly, humiliated and broken. But this time I wasn't leaving empty-handed. The documents from the bank were waiting in my inbox when I woke up. The subject line "Property Transfer File Confidential" stared back at me like a dare. My stomach tightened as I clicked it open. Dozens of scanned pages, loaded one by one title transfer forms, notarized affidavits, trust papers. At first, they looked routine until I saw my own name printed in black ink sitting neatly beside my parents' signatures. The problem was I had never signed them. My hand shook as I zoomed in. My signature was there, but it wasn't mine. The loops and the L's were too wide, the slant too perfect. I'd worked in accounting long enough to recognize a digital overlay when I saw one. Whoever did this had copied my old mortgage signature from the original purchase documents. The date was 3 weeks ago, right before Mia's wedding. The pit in my stomach grew deeper. There was also a clause titled Brooks Legacy Holdings Trust. It named George and Donna Brooks as trustees and listed Mia Caldwell as secondary beneficiary. They'd created a fake trust to make it look like the house was part of their family estate. It was deliberate, calculated. I printed every page, spreading them across my dining table until the entire surface was covered in paper. The air felt thick, heavy with the smell of ink and betrayal. I remembered the first time my mother ever asked for financial help. She'd called crying, saying Dad's hours were cut, and the bills were piling up. I had just been promoted at work, proud that I could finally do something good. I wired her the money that same day. It was supposed to be temporary. But temporary became just until next month, and then you know how expensive life is. It never stopped. My phone buzzed again. It was Mia. I hesitated before answering. "What do you want, Mia?" she sighed. "Mom told me you came over yesterday. You can't just storm into the house like that." I laughed bitterly. "The house I bought, you mean?" Her tone shifted colder. "You're being dramatic. Mom said you've been acting paranoid about the property. They're just trying to make sure things are legally secure." "Secure?" I snapped. "They forged my name, Mia. That's not security, that's theft." There was silence on the other end. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "I don't know what you're talking about. Mom and Dad said the house was always meant for them." "Of course they did," I said, tears of frustration burning my eyes. "They've rewritten history so many times, even you believe it now." "Lauren, please," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You've always been so angry. Maybe you just need to let things go." "Let things go," I repeated, stunned. "They stole from me, Mia, and you're defending them." Her tone turned sharp again. "I'm defending my family." I took a breath to steady my voice. "I'm your family too." The silence that followed was louder than any words. She ended the call without saying goodbye. For a long time I just sat there staring at the documents. My whole life I had believed that loyalty and love were the same thing, that helping my parents was a kind of repayment for everything they'd done. But now I saw it differently. Love built on guilt wasn't love, it was control. The apartment suddenly felt too small, too quiet. I grabbed my coat and went outside, walking aimlessly through the drizzle. The streets of Asheville were gray and sleepy, but my mind was racing. Every memory of family dinners, holiday photos, Sunday calls, they all looked different now under the harsh light of truth. I was never the daughter they cherished. I was the safety net they depended on. By the time I returned home, the anger had turned into resolve. I needed help. I called Dana, my friend from college who worked as a paralegal. She picked up on the second ring. "Lauren, you sound awful." "What's going on?" I told her everything, every payment, every forged document, every lie. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Lauren, that's fraud. Full-on identity and property fraud. You need to get a lawyer right now. They're my parents, Dana, I said softly. I can't take them to court, she sighed. Then they'll keep doing it until you stop them. You don't have to destroy them, you just have to protect yourself. I swallowed hard. Can you help me find someone I know, a real estate attorney, she said. Evelyn Carter. She's tough but fair. I'll text you her number. After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. She wasn't fragile anymore. She was tired, furious, but clear. I began highlighting the inconsistencies in the paperwork, different ink colors, mismatched initials dates that didn't line up. As I worked, something clicked inside me, a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. They thought they could bury me in paperwork, but numbers and documents were my language. Around midnight, I found something strange, a file labeled Brooks Legacy, balance sheet, PDF. It wasn't part of the original email but attached to one of the scanned pages. My curiosity overrode my caution. I opened it. My jaw dropped. The spreadsheet listed transactions over the past 3 years, small amounts consistent disguised under categories like family gift maintenance, insurance reimbursement. Each entry was money transferred directly from my accounts. And next to each transaction was an account number belonging to my parents, and one in Mia's name. They hadn't just stolen the house. They'd been siphoning money for years. I sank into the chair, staring at the screen as my hands began to tremble. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was emotional, spiritual. Everything I had done to keep them comfortable, they had turned into a weapon. A tear slipped down my cheek, but I wiped it away quickly. I wasn't going to cry for them anymore. By the time the sun rose, my table looked like a crime board. Printed emails, highlighted sections, notes scribbled in red pen. It looked obsessive, maybe even unhinged, but it was proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that the truth had always been there, hidden behind layers of guilt and manipulation. My phone buzzed again, an email from Blue Ridge Bank. The subject read, "Follow-up verification of signatures." I opened it with shaky hands. "Dear Miss Brooks," it began. "Upon further review, the notary associated with the property transfer, Harriet M. Caldwell, does not appear in our licensed records for Buncombe County." I froze. Caldwell. The name was too close to something else. Caldwell. Ethan's last name. My mind began racing. Could it be a coincidence? Or was it another layer of deception? My mother's voice from the wedding echoed in my head. "Ethan's family knows people. They can help us if we need anything." I realized then that this wasn't just a family betrayal. It was something bigger. My parents might have started it, but someone smarter, wealthier, and far more dangerous was pulling the strings. The rain outside turned heavier, tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. I stood there for a long time, watching the drops slide down the glass, thinking about how quickly a family could turn into strangers. When the phone rang again, I almost didn't answer, but the voice on the other end was Dana's, calm but urgent. "Lauren, I talked to Evelyn. She's expecting you tomorrow morning at 9. Bring everything you've got." I thanked her quietly. After hanging up, I gathered the papers into neat piles, sliding them into a folder. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel powerless. I felt awake. I turned off the lights, letting the room fall into darkness. My reflection in the window was clearer, now steadier. "They wanted to erase me," I whispered, "but they forgot one thing." I smiled faintly, a mix of pain and pride. "You can't erase the one who owns the truth." Rain hammered against the window as I sat alone in the apartment, the clock ticking past midnight. The folder labeled Brooks Legacy Fraud lay open in front of me, its pages spreading like the aftermath of an explosion. Every document, every forged signature, every bank receipt glared up at me, accusing and undeniable. I could feel the exhaustion in my bones, but there was something harder beneath it, resolve. My phone buzzed again. Dozens of unread messages from my parents and Mia filled the screen. Some pleaded, some accused. I turned it face down. Their words didn't matter anymore. I'd spent years trying to explain myself to people who never really listened. This time my silence would speak for me. I took a long breath and opened my banking dashboard. Line after line of auto payments glowed in the dim light: electricity, water, gas, insurance, phone plans, even Dad's prescriptions. Every bill tied to the house on Willow Creek Lane. $2,500 a month every month for nearly 5 years. My thumb hovered over the screen. It felt surreal, realizing how much of my life had been spent funding theirs. Then I hit cancel. A pop-up asked, "Are you sure you want to end this recurring payment?" "Yes," I whispered, pressing confirm. Electricity gone. Gas gone. Internet gone. Each click felt like a clean break, a release from a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The hum of dependency, the invisible leash of obligation, I cut through all of it with a few simple keystrokes. The apartment was silent except for the rain. I felt lighter, but it wasn't relief. It was something colder, sharper. I picked up my phone and began to draft a message. "You won't have to worry about me anymore or my money." I hit send before I could soften it with guilt. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. It sounded like applause. The memories started creeping in uninvited. The Christmases when I'd maxed out my credit cards to buy them new furniture. The birthdays where I'd paid for expensive dinners just to see them smile. The time Mom cried about the water heater breaking and I spent my vacation bonus to replace it. Each memory turned sour, now poisoned by the realization that none of it had been love. It had been obligation, one-sided and unending. My laptop chimed with a new notification. The email subject made my stomach twist: follow-up property title dispute review. I opened it and reread the words from the bank's fraud department. They had verified the notary on the fake documents was unlicensed. The case was officially flagged for investigation. Pending review, the property title remains under Lauren Brooks. My heart pounded with a strange kind of joy, small but fierce. For the first time in weeks, the law was on my side. But then my eyes caught the final line. The other parties have submitted additional notarized affidavits for verification. Additional affidavits. They were still fighting, still fabricating. I felt the tremor of rage rise again. I grabbed my car keys and coat. If they wanted a war, I would bring it to them. The city streets were empty, slick from rain. My wipers struggled against the storm as I drove aimlessly, the rhythmic thump echoing my heartbeat. I didn't even know where I was going until I realized the direction toward the house. The drive took 20 minutes, but every second felt longer. I replayed everything: my mother's cold stare at the wedding, my father's silence, Mia's hollow defense. Every word, every betrayal burned hotter with each mile. When I turned onto Willow Creek Lane, the house came into view, dark, quiet, smug. The porch light flickered faintly, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a figure move behind the curtains. I slowed but didn't stop. They didn't deserve confrontation yet. Instead, I parked across the street and watched. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. They were sleeping comfortably under the roof I paid for and the warmth of the power I supplied. But not for long. I imagined the morning to come when the lights wouldn't turn on the heater, wouldn't hum, the Wi-Fi would cut off mid-call. It was petty, maybe. But revenge didn't need to be grand to be satisfying. Sometimes justice was as simple as watching people realize how powerless they were without you. My phone buzzed again, startling me. I glanced down, voicemail from Dad. Against my better judgment, I hit play. "Lauren, your mother's upset," his tired voice said. "We don't understand why you're doing this. You know the house was always meant to be for the family. You're overreacting. The bank said everything's been settled, you don't have to worry about it anymore." Settled. The word stabbed through the quiet. I hit replay. His tone wasn't defensive, it was smug. He thought they'd won. That the forged trust had already gone through. "They think it's theirs," I whispered to myself. The fury that rose inside me was cold this time, measured. It wasn't the desperate anger of a wounded daughter. It was the precision of someone ready to strike back. I started the engine again and drove downtown. The streets were empty, lit by streetlights and the occasional passing car. When I stopped outside Blue Ridge National Bank's glass tower, I stared at the logo glowing faintly in the rain. Tomorrow I'd meet with someone inside. I'd show them the proof, the lies, the trail of theft hidden under family trust and legacy. I'd turn their own documents into evidence against them. I looked up at the building, its mirrored facade reflecting my face-wet hair, tired eyes, determination carved into every line. For once I didn't see a victim. I saw someone dangerous. I drove home and parked, letting the rain wash over the windshield before turning off the engine. The phone buzzed again, more messages lighting up the screen. "Mom, what have you done? The internet's down. The heat's not working. MIA Mom's freaking out. You need to fix this. You're taking it too far. DAD, you're not welcome here anymore." I read them all one after another, then deleted every message. I poured myself a drink and stood by the window watching the rain soften into mist. The city shimmered like a watercolor painting, blurred but beautiful. I thought of Margaret, the mother I'd never met but whose name was still on that hidden trust fund. Somehow I felt closer to her now than I ever had to the people who raised me. The clock struck 2. My laptop pinged again, another email. This time from the bank's fraud investigator, a man named Andrew. "Miss Brooks," it read, "we've flagged several inconsistencies in the submitted affidavits. The property remains under your ownership, pending verification. However, please be advised the other parties may attempt to pursue additional legal filings. We recommend keeping documentation ready for escalation." I smiled faintly. I already was. I placed every printed file into a labeled binder and sealed it shut. My evidence, my armor, my weapon. The storm outside began to quiet, but my mind buzzed with a calm intensity. Tomorrow I'd call the attorney. Dana mentioned Evelyn Carter. Tomorrow I'd stop reacting and start fighting back. Before turning off the lights, I walked to the mirror again. My reflection looked the same, but felt different, stronger, sharper. "They wanted to call me a freeloader," I said softly. "Let's see who depends on who now." Outside thunder rolled one last time, low and distant, like an omen or a promise. I left the lamp on and sat at the table, tracing the edge of the binder with my fingertips. For the first time in years, I didn't feel fear or guilt. I felt power. The morning light felt harsher than usual, slicing through the blinds like a reminder that peace was temporary. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the fresh email from Blue Ridge National Bank. The subject line was short, sterile, almost polite: "Verification needed, property transfer dispute." It sounded simple, procedural, but I knew better. It was the start of war. The coffee in my mug had gone cold as I reread the lines again and again. Notarized affidavits submitted by additional parties. That phrase made my stomach twist. I didn't need to guess who those parties were. I could already see my mother's neat handwriting, my father's tired signature, and maybe even Mia's new last name printed neatly on some fraudulent line. I dialed the number listed at the bottom of the email. After endless holds, I was transferred to a calm male voice who introduced himself as Andrew from the Property Disputes Division. His tone was professional, almost too neutral. "Ms. Brooks, I understand this situation is distressing. We've verified the documents submitted for the trust transfer," he said. My heart jumped. And well, he continued, "some inconsistencies caught our attention. The signatures and notary credentials don't fully align with our database. We're holding off on any title changes until we complete verification. But we'll need you to come in today to sign a dispute affidavit formally." I exhaled slowly, forcing my voice to stay steady. "What happens if I don't?" "Then the system processes the transfer automatically at the end of the week," he said. "Automatic. Just like that, the life I built could vanish with one keystroke." "I'll be there in 2 hours," I said and hung up. The drive downtown was silent except for the windshield wipers swiping away the drizzle. The city looked gray, its buildings like stone-faced witnesses to my unraveling life. When I arrived at the bank, everything smelled of cold air and printer ink. Andrew was younger than I expected, mid-30s, neatly dressed, polite in that corporate way that never reached his eyes. He led me into a glass-walled conference room and spread out the documents on the table. These were the papers submitted for the transfer, he said, sliding them toward me. I looked down. My stomach turned. There it was again, my name in black ink, curling in the same slant as my actual signature. But this time, something else caught my attention. The notary seal read Harriet M. Calwell. Calwell. The name hit me like an electric jolt. Too close to Caldwell. "Is this notary registered here?" I asked, my voice sharp. Andrew adjusted his glasses, scanning his laptop. "That's the interesting part. No, there's no record of a Harriet Calwell as an active notary in Buncombe County or anywhere in North Carolina. The number listed is inactive. It was decommissioned 10 years ago. So it's fake." "Likely," he said carefully. "We'll need to confirm that through our legal department, but yes, it's fraudulent." My pulse thundered in my ears. Who submitted these papers? According to the system, the request was filed through a legal intermediary, Callahan and Tate Associates. I frowned. I've never heard of them. Andrew shrugged. "They're small, local, or were. The firm dissolved about 2 years ago." I felt my chest tighten. "Then who filed this? You can't dissolve a company and then file legal documents." He looked uneasy. "Well, the license was reactivated 3 months ago under a new name and address in Charlotte." "And who's the registered agent?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. He hesitated before saying it. "A Victoria Calwell." For a moment the room tilted. I could see her face clearly. Victoria, Mia's new mother-in-law, standing at the wedding with her perfect smile and diamond earrings, her arm looped through my mother's, as if they'd known each other for years. I pressed my hand against the table to steady myself. "She's behind this." Andrew frowned slightly. "You know her? She's my sister's mother-in-law," I said slowly. "And apparently, the architect of my family's betrayal." Andrew's expression softened, though his tone remained professional. "Miss Brooks, I strongly suggest you hire an attorney. What they've done isn't just unethical, it's criminal." I nodded numbly, signing the affidavit he handed me. My handwriting looked strange, unfamiliar, like I didn't fully belong to myself anymore. When I left the bank, the cold air hit me like a slap. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, staring at the sky. It wasn't just my parents anymore. They'd been manipulated too, or worse, complicit. Either way, I was done pretending this was still a family dispute. Back in my car, I called Dana. "I went to the bank," I said. "It's worse than I thought." "What happened?" she asked, her voice sharp with concern. "They used a fake notary. The law firm that filed the papers was shut down years ago, but someone reopened it under Victoria Calwell's name." Dana cursed under her breath. "Jesus, Lauren, that's premeditated fraud. You need Evelyn now. Don't wait. I'm already on my way to call her," I said. Dana paused. "You okay?" I laughed softly, the sound brittle. "I'm past okay. I'm ready." I ended the call and started the car. For the first time, the fear was gone. What replaced it was clarity, a sharp, clean line between me and them. That evening, the news broke. A local TV station aired a short report about the ongoing property dispute between a local accountant and her family. The headline was predictable, designed to stir gossip: family feud over inheritance errors in Asheville suburb. There was no mention of fraud, no mention of Victoria. Just my name stripped of context, dangling in the court of public opinion. My phone buzzed nonstop. Co-workers, old friends, even distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Some messages were sympathetic. Most were curious. What happened? Is it true? Are you okay? I ignored them all. Then another notification, an email from the bank. The subject: escalation notice. External parties contacted. I clicked it open, my heart pounding. Blue Ridge National Bank has received communication from legal representatives claiming to act on behalf of the Brooks family. Please refrain from accessing the property until ownership verification is complete. They were locking me out of my own house. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to Willow Creek Lane. The street was dark except for the faint glow from their windows. When I pulled up to the driveway, I saw it immediately, a new padlock on the gate. I got out of the car, rain misting against my skin. Through the living room window, I could see silhouettes moving. My mother setting the table, my father watching TV, laughter drifting faintly through the glass. They were celebrating. I stood there in the cold, my fingers curled around the iron bars of the gate. My voice came out low, steady, almost calm. "You think it's yours now," I whispered. "You really think you won?" Headlights appeared behind me. I turned, blinking against the glare. A police cruiser pulled up to the curb, red and blue lights flashing softly. The officer stepped out holding a folded paper. "Ma'am, are you Lauren Brooks?" "Yes," I said, confused. He handed me the paper. "You've been issued a no trespass order by the current residents. You can't enter the property until the court resolves the ownership." For a moment, all I could do was stare at him. "This is my house," I said quietly. "I bought it. Every brick, every bill. It's mine." He looked uncomfortable but shrugged. "I'm just doing my job." I nodded, folded the paper, and walked back to my car. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. Something inside me had snapped cleanly, irrevocably. As I started the engine, I caught one last glimpse of the house through the rain. My family's silhouettes blurred in the warm glow of the living room, laughing, toasting, living comfortably inside what they'd stolen. I drove away without looking back. They thought the paperwork made them owners. They thought a forged trust and a few lies could erase me. But they didn't understand yet. Paper burns. Truth doesn't. The no trespass order sat on my kitchen counter, its edges curling from where my wet hands had gripped it. The paper wasn't heavy, but it carried the weight of everything that had been taken from me. I read it again, each line colder than the last, my own address. My name listed as unauthorized. They'd turned me into a stranger inside my own home. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, my parents, my sister, and Victoria Calwell, laughing inside those walls as if nothing had happened. The same walls I paid for, the same roof I built. By dawn, exhaustion had turned into fury. When Dana picked up the phone, my voice was steady, almost too calm. "I'm done waiting," I said. "Give me Evelyn's number. I'm hiring her today." 2 hours later, I sat across from Evelyn Carter in her downtown office. She was everything Dana had promised, sharp, composed, and unshakably professional. Her dark hair was pulled back, her voice quiet but confident. She listened without interrupting, as I laid everything out: the forged trust, the fake notary, the title transfer, and now the no trespass order. When I finally stopped, she leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen against her notebook. "They didn't just forge your signature," she said. "They built a fake trail around it. That's organized fraud, not a family misunderstanding." "I know," I said, my voice low. "I want it undone. All of it." She nodded once. "Then we start by finding out who notarized those documents. Because whoever that is, they're the link." Evelyn picked up her phone and called the county clerk's office right in front of me. Her tone was polite but firm. Within minutes, she got the answer we both expected. "No active notary by that name," the clerk said. "And hasn't been for at least 10 years. Evelyn thanked her, hung up, and turned back to me. "So the notary doesn't exist. But the name Caldwell, it's too specific to be random." My chest tightened. "It's not random," I said. "It's one letter away from Caldwell, my sister's new last name." Evelyn's brow furrowed. Victoria's eye nodded. "Her mother. She's been pulling the strings since the wedding. My parents trusted her because she's wealthy and connected. She must have convinced them it was a way to protect the house." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Protect it or steal it? The next step was tracing the paper trail. Evelyn contacted the state business registry to look into Callahan and Tate, the law firm that had filed the trust. I sat across from her as she scrolled through records on her computer, her expression tightening with every click. "Here," she said, turning the screen toward me. "The firm was dissolved 2 years ago, but she scrolled further, reactivated 3 months ago under a new address." My stomach dropped. "Where Charlotte, and who's listed as the agent?" Evelyn's voice was steady, but I could tell she was holding her breath. Victoria Calwell. I stared at the screen, my pulse roaring in my ears. For a moment I couldn't speak. Everything made sense now, the sudden friendship between my mother and Victoria, the generous offers to help with finances, the smug way. Victoria smiled at the wedding when I'd been humiliated. She used them, I whispered. She used my parents to get to me, to the property. Evelyn met my gaze. And they let her. I didn't know what hurt more, the manipulation or the complicity. We spent the rest of the afternoon building a case. Evelyn requested copies of every document from the bank, from the fraudulent trust filing, and from the county clerk. Each piece connected to the next, like puzzle fragments, and every line pointed back to Victoria. She'd used her wealth and corporate influence to reopen a dead law firm, file fake legal documents, and funnel ownership into her name under the guise of a family trust. By the time we finished, the sun had started to set. I stood by the window, staring at the traffic below. They thought they were protecting themselves, I said quietly. But she was just using them as pawns. Evelyn nodded. That's how people like her operate. She dangled security in front of them, and they sold you out to get it. The words hit harder than I expected. I realized that for the first time in my life, my parents had chosen someone else's promise over my loyalty. When I got home that night, the city felt unfamiliar. Every shadow looked like a memory trying to reach for me. I sat in my car outside the building, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I wasn't crying, I was beyond that. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was a strange kind of emptiness. Inside, I poured myself a glass of water, then another just to have something to do with my hands. My phone buzzed again, unknown number. I almost ignored it, but instinct told me to answer. Lauren Brooks. The voice was smooth, controlled. A woman. Who's this? This is Victoria Calwell, she said. I think we need to talk. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I have nothing to say to you, I said finally. Oh, I think you do, she replied, her tone like velvet hiding steel. You've been very busy lately. Lawyers, banks, accusations. You should be careful, dear. False claims can backfire. Are you threatening me? She chuckled softly. I'm reminding you how fragile reputation can be. People love a good scandal, especially when it's about an ungrateful daughter suing her own parents. Her words slithered through the line, calm and cruel. I tightened my grip on the phone. You stole from me, I said, and you used my family to do it. I'm not scared of you. That's the thing about people like you, she said. You think truth matters, but truth only matters to those who can afford it. And then she hung up. I stood there for a long time, the silence thick around me. When I finally sat down, I opened the folder Evelyn had given me earlier. Every document, every forged signature, every email between my parents and Victoria's office. They thought they could build a fortress of lies and hide behind her influence. But paper doesn't protect people, it exposes them. By morning, I was at Evelyn's office again. She called me, I said. She's already trying to intimidate me. Evelyn's expression didn't waver. That's what guilty people do. But she made one mistake. She got cocky. What do we do now? We go to the State Fraud Bureau, she said. And we bring everything. Once they open an investigation, she can't buy her way out. The next few hours passed in a blur of signatures, statements, and filings. Evelyn handled most of the talking, her confidence steady and surgical. I watched her work and felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. By the end of the day, she turned to me with a tired smile. It's officially filed. They'll start investigating within the week. I nodded, gripping the edge of her desk. She's not going to stop, you know. I don't need her to stop, Evelyn said. I just need her to make one more mistake. And she will. That night, I sat by my window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Victoria was probably sipping wine in a glass mansion, planning her next move. My parents were likely too deep in denial to see the truth. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of any of them. They had money, influence, and lies. But I had proof, and this time, I wasn't going to burn quietly. The text from my father came early that morning, short and emotionless. "We need to talk. Don't bring lawyers. This has gone too far." A few minutes later, my mother's message followed. "If you ever loved us, meet us tonight." I stared at the screen for a long time. Every part of me screamed to ignore it, to let Evelyn handle everything, but curiosity burned deeper than anger. What more could they possibly say? What lie could they spin now that the law was already closing in on them? Against every instinct, I typed a reply. 8 o'clock. I'll come alone. By the time dusk fell, my hands were trembling on the steering wheel. The road to Willow Creek Lane was dark, lined with shadows that seemed to whisper as I passed. The house glowed warmly in the distance. The same porch light that used to welcome me home now felt like a spotlight waiting to expose me. When I pulled up, the gate was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled like lavender and lemon polish. My mother's favorite scent. It used to feel like comfort. Now it felt like guilt trying to disguise itself as cleanliness. She was sitting in the living room, her posture perfect, a glass of wine in her hand. My father stood behind her arms, folded eyes, dull and tired. I didn't bother sitting. "Why am I here?" I asked flatly. My mother looked up slowly, her voice soft, practiced. "Because this has gone too far. Lawyers, banks, police, it's tearing us apart." "Tearing us apart," I laughed, though it came out harsh and brittle. "You did that the second you forged my name." My father's jaw tightened. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Dad?" I snapped. "Because the bank thinks it was fraud, and the lawyer thinks it was criminal. So please explain to me what it really was." He opened his mouth but hesitated. My mother cut in, her tone rising. "We were trying to protect this family. Lauren, you don't understand what it's like to lose everything. Protect it from what, me?" She stood up now, voice sharp, eyes bright with fury. "We gave you everything. We raised you. We sacrificed for you, and now you're destroying us over a piece of paper." Something in me broke. I slammed my hand on the table. "You didn't give me anything. I paid for this house. I paid every bill, every repair, every light that's ever been on in this place. And you called me a freeloader." My mother froze, her breath catching. My father stepped forward, his voice lower, strained. "We didn't mean to hurt you, sweetheart. Victoria told us the trust would just make things easier. She said it would keep the property safe for the future." I turned to him, disbelief dripping from my words. "Safe from who?" From me, he hesitated, eyes darting to my mother. She looked away. The silence that followed told me everything. "You were never going to tell me," I said quietly. "You were just going to let me find out when I was erased." My father's voice cracked. "There's something else you don't know." My mother's head snapped toward him. "George, don't." He ignored her, his gaze fixed on me. "You're not biologically ours, Lauren." For a moment, the room vanished. The sound of rain against the windows faded, replaced by the pounding in my ears. "What did you just say?" My mother closed her eyes, whispering. "Please, George." He kept going, words tumbling out like stones. "You're Donna's sister's daughter, Margaret's child. She had you before she left town. When she died, we took you in. We wanted to protect you, to give you a family." I stared at him, unable to process the words. My hands felt numb. "You adopted me," I said slowly. "You lied to me my entire life." My mother took a shaky breath. "We loved you like our own. It didn't matter." "It mattered to me," I shouted. "Every time you made me feel like I didn't belong, every time you said I wasn't enough. It makes sense now. You knew I wasn't really yours." Tears welled in my mother's eyes, but they only made me angrier. "You let me believe I was the problem. You let me feel ungrateful and guilty for years while you were hiding the truth." My father rubbed his face. "We thought we were doing the right thing." "The right thing," I laughed bitterly. "Then why forge my name? Why steal my house? Why hide who I am?" My mother sank onto the couch, trembling. "Victoria told us if the adoption ever came out, Margaret's old estate could claim the house. She said she could help us secure everything, so it would stay in the family." We didn't know she changed the documents. I shook my head slowly, the puzzle pieces falling into place. You thought I'd find out the truth one day and take the house from you. So you decided to take it first. My mother looked up at me, eyes red. We didn't want to lose you. You lost me the day you lied, I said. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. My father's voice finally broke it. There's more. Margaret left a trust for you. A small inheritance from her art gallery in Charleston. We didn't even know about it until Victoria found the records. She said she could consolidate everything under the same trust. That's when she turned it into her own scam. I finished for him. He nodded weakly. She played us all. The air in the room thickened with guilt, regret, and something else, fear. My mother began to sob, her hands shaking as she tried to reach for me. I just wanted to keep this family together. I stepped back. You can't keep a family together by lying, Mom. You can only bury the truth for so long before it rots everything it touches. She buried her face in her hands. My father looked at me helplessly, but I couldn't stay any longer. I turned toward the door, the house suddenly too small, too loud, too full of ghosts. Lauren, please, my mother cried. We're still your parents. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Then you should have acted like it. The wind outside was cold, sharp against my face as I stepped onto the porch. I walked down the steps, the gravel crunching under my shoes. For a moment I thought I saw movement near the gate, a figure standing under the soft glow of the streetlight. As I got closer, I recognized her instantly. Victoria Calwell. Elegant as ever, dressed in black, her hair perfectly pinned. She smiled when our eyes met. Rough night, she asked, her voice silky and calm. I stopped a few feet away. You have some nerve showing up here. Her smile didn't waver. I just wanted to see how the truth landed. Family secrets are funny things, aren't they? They always come out eventually. What do you want? I asked, my voice low. She stepped closer, her perfume strong and expensive. To remind you that you and I aren't so different. You're smart, capable. You could have everything they tried to take from you and more. You just need to stop fighting the inevitable. I'd rather burn it all down than take anything from you, I said. Victoria's smile faltered just for a second. We'll see, she murmured, turning away. You'll learn that everyone has a price. I watched her walk down the street, her heels clicking against the pavement, until she disappeared into the dark. I stood there for a long time, the cold air cutting through my anger, my grief, my disbelief. Behind me, the house glowed like a lie I'd finally stopped believing in. That was the night I understood my parents had been victims, but Victoria was the architect. She'd built this entire web, and I was done getting caught in it. The next time we met, it wouldn't be as family. It would be as enemies. The night after the confrontation, I barely slept. Every word my parents said replayed in my mind like a broken recording. You're not biologically ours, Margaret's child. We only wanted to protect you. But there was no protection in what they'd done. They hadn't guarded me. They'd hidden me, twisted my life into a story that served their guilt. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called Evelyn before the sun came up. My voice was steady, but it didn't sound like me. I'm ready to move forward, I said. She didn't ask for details. She simply said, come in, we'll start today. Her office felt different this time, less intimidating, more like a war room. Papers were spread across her desk, highlighted and tabbed, each one a piece of evidence in a battle I was no longer afraid to fight. She looked at me with a mixture of respect and concern. You've heard from them, haven't you? She asked. I nodded, and I found out the truth about who I am. Her brow furrowed. You mean the adoption? Yes, I said quietly. I'm not their biological daughter. My real mother, Margaret, left me a trust fund I never knew existed. Victoria found out about it years ago and used that as leverage to build her case against me. Evelyn leaned forward. Then we have a new angle. If Margaret left you that trust, that makes you her legal heir. Not just to the money, but to anything her estate owned, including this house. I met her eyes. Then we prove it. Within an hour, she was on the phone with the probate office in Charleston. I sat across from her, silent, watching as she used that calm, commanding voice that made even bureaucrats scramble to help her. "Yes," she said. "We're looking for records of an art gallery registered under the name Margaret Hale, or Margaret Brooks, circa 25 years ago." She waited, tapping her pen. Then she smiled. "Perfect. Please send copies of the trust and will to my office immediately. And yes, make it certified." When she hung up, her expression was fierce and focused. "They have it. Margaret Brooks established a trust in your name, Lauren Hale Brooks. The will states explicitly that her assets transfer to her daughter in full upon her death." Something inside me broke open. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the unwanted one, the burden, the scapegoat. I was someone's legacy. Someone who had wanted me. Evelyn must have seen the change in my face. "Margaret did this to protect you," she said gently. "Now it's your turn to protect what she left behind." Before we could take another step, though, the storm hit. That afternoon, my phone exploded with notifications. News outlets, blogs, and even social media accounts were suddenly flooded with a headline that made my stomach drop. "Wealthy daughter sued for defrauding parents in property dispute." The article included a photo of me outside the courthouse, cropped from months ago when I'd renewed my business license. It painted me as greedy, unstable, and manipulative. The journalist quoted anonymous family sources claiming I'd stolen from my aging parents. The source wasn't anonymous, it was Victoria. Evelyn stormed into my office when she saw it. "She's playing the public angle," she said, tossing her tablet onto the table. "Classic deflection. Paint you as the villain before the court can decide. She wants me humiliated," I said softly, "the way I was at the wedding." "Then we hit back," Evelyn said, "legally, not emotionally. I'm filing for an emergency injunction to freeze all assets tied to the fraudulent trust. That includes your parents' accounts, the property, and any affiliated corporate transactions linked to Victoria's name." "Will that work?" I asked. Evelyn's expression hardened. "If the judge sees what I see, it will." The following week, everything moved in slow motion. Evelyn filed the case. The bank confirmed my legal claim to the house was still active. Victoria's lawyers tried to counter, but their paperwork was sloppy. Too many inconsistencies, too many fake seals. The truth was starting to leak through the cracks. Then came the hearing. The courthouse smelled like old wood and tension. Cameras flashed outside as reporters whispered my name. Inside, the air felt thick, heavy with the weight of years of betrayal. My parents sat together at one table, their faces pale and tired. Mia sat beside them, avoiding my gaze. And across from me, Victoria Calwell, immaculate in a cream suit, her lips curved in that familiar, practiced smile. Evelyn leaned toward me. "Don't speak unless the judge asks you to. Let the evidence speak for itself." The judge entered. Everyone stood. I could barely breathe. When it was Evelyn's turn to present, her voice was calm and precise. "Your Honor, the plaintiff, Miss Lauren Brooks, is the rightful owner of 611 Willow Creek Lane. The defense has submitted fraudulent documentation transferring the property to a trust that does not legally exist. We have evidence that the notary listed Harriet M. Calwell was never licensed in this state." She clicked the remote, and a series of documents flashed onto the screen. Bank transfers, the false trust, the fake notary stamp, even the dissolved law firm reactivated under Victoria's name. The room murmured. Then Evelyn presented the final piece. "We also have the original will of the late Margaret Brooks, Miss Lauren's biological mother. This establishes that Lauren Brooks is the sole heir to the property and the associated trust." For the first time, Victoria's composure cracked. Her smile faltered. She leaned toward her lawyer, whispering sharply. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father stared at the floor. When it was over, the judge took a deep breath. Given the overwhelming evidence of fraud, this court recognizes Lauren Brooks as the sole legal owner of the property located at 611 Willow Creek Lane. Further investigation into the forged documents and associated parties is hereby ordered. The gavel struck. The sound echoed like thunder. I sat frozen, trying to absorb the words. Evelyn touched my arm. "You won," she whispered. As I stood, Victoria rose too, her eyes blazing. "This isn't over," she hissed under her breath. "You've made a powerful enemy." I looked her straight in the eye. "So have you." Outside reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, shouting questions. Someone shoved a microphone toward me. "Miss Brooks, do you have a comment for your family?" I paused, looking past the cameras, past the chaos. Then I said clearly, "Blood doesn't define family. Truth does." The crowd went silent for a heartbeat before the questions erupted again, but I didn't answer. I just kept walking. That night, I returned to Willow Creek Lane for the first time as its rightful owner. The house was quiet, dark, except for the soft glow of the porch light. My keys trembled in my hand as I unlocked the door. Inside, the air was still heavy with ghosts of the past. My footsteps echoed through the hallway, past the pictures of smiling faces that no longer felt like mine. I stopped in the living room, touching the wall where I'd once measured Mia's height as a child. For a moment, grief and anger blurred together, bittersweet and exhausting. Then I whispered to the empty room, "You can rest now, Margaret. I'm home." The words hung in the air like a promise. When I stepped outside again, the night was quiet. My phone buzzed with a new message, Evelyn, confirming that the trust and inheritance were now legally under my name. I looked up at the stars, the cold air biting at my cheeks. For the first time, I felt something close to peace. They had taken everything from me, and I had taken it all back. The house was finally mine again, but it felt hollow. The walls were the same, the floors unchanged, yet everything inside carried the echo of betrayal. I spent the first few days wandering from room to room, cleaning surfaces that weren't dirty, trying to make peace with a space that no longer felt like home. The silence was overwhelming, but somewhere beneath it I could almost hear my mother's voice, faint and distant. Margaret's voice, not Donna's. One morning, while sorting through boxes left in the attic, I found a wooden trunk pushed against the far wall. It was covered in dust and paint splatters, the metal latch rusted but intact. My heartbeat quickened. I hadn't noticed it before. I pulled it into the light and unlatched it, the hinges creaking open like an old confession. Inside were letters tied with a faded blue ribbon, stacks of old receipts and photographs of women smiling in front of an art gallery. The sign above the door read the Margaret Hale Gallery, Charleston, 1992. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the top letter. The handwriting was elegant, looping. To my dear friend Helen, if they control your name, they control your life. Never let anyone own your worth. The words hit me like a whisper from the past. There were more letters underneath, all addressed to different women. Notes of encouragement, small financial records, sketches with signatures. Margaret's gallery hadn't just sold paintings, it had been a refuge. A quiet network of women helping one another survive manipulation, loss, and financial control. I read through every letter until the sun began to set, the attic filling with golden light. My mother, my real mother, had built a secret sisterhood long before I was old enough to understand what strength meant. It wasn't just art she'd left behind. It was legacy. That night, I found one envelope tucked between the pages of an old journal. The handwriting was different, shaky or rushed. My name was written on the front. For my daughter, if she ever finds this. I hesitated before opening it, my breath catching. "Lauren, if you are reading this, it means the truth found its way to you. I couldn't protect you the way I wanted, but I hope my love carried through the choices I made. The gallery is gone, but the women it helped are still out there. They were my circle, my strength. Find them, carry it forward, not out of revenge, but out of love. Margaret." Tears blurred the ink as I folded the letter against my chest. For years I'd thought my worth came from what I could give others, money, effort, loyalty. But Margaret had built her life on the opposite belief that power was something you shared, not surrendered. By morning I knew what I had to do. I spent hours tracing the addresses from the letters, each one leading me further down a map of lives Margaret had once touched. Most were decades old, faded or disconnected, but one return address stood out: Helen Porter, Savannah, Georgia. 2 days later, I stood outside a small coastal home, shaded by Spanish moss and salt air. The woman who opened the door looked to be in her 70s, her silver hair tied back, her eyes bright and curious. "Lauren?" she asked softly. "Margaret's daughter." The sound of my mother's name spoken aloud after so many years made my throat tighten. "You knew her," I said. Helen smiled. "Oh, honey, we all did. Come in." Her living room was warm and filled with paintings, bold colors, messy strokes, life bursting from every corner. She poured tea as she talked, her voice steady but full of nostalgia. Margaret was a force of nature. That gallery wasn't just for art. It was for women like us. We were tired of being invisible, tired of being told to be quiet. She gave us a place to breathe. I listened in silence, absorbing every word. "She said she had a daughter," Helen continued, smiling gently. "Said she'd grow up strong, smarter than anyone expected. You're proof she was right." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "She left something for me," I said, pulling the letter from my bag. Helen's eyes softened when she saw the familiar handwriting. "She always knew you'd come looking," she murmured. We spent the whole afternoon talking about Margaret, her laughter, her temper, her vision for the world. Helen showed me old photographs of their gatherings, women in bright dresses sharing wine and stories, their eyes fierce with something like freedom. Before I left, Helen pressed a small locket into my palm. "She gave me this to hold until you found me," she said. Inside was a faded photo of Margaret holding a baby me. On the back, in delicate script, she had written, "My daughter, my legacy." The drive back to Asheville was long, but the silence no longer felt empty. For the first time, I wasn't alone. When I returned home, I spread Margaret's letters across the dining table. The idea came slowly then, all at once, a continuation of what she'd started. I called Evelyn the next morning. "I want to turn Margaret's trust into something real," I said. "A foundation. A safe space for women who've been manipulated or financially trapped like she was. Like I was." Evelyn's voice was warm. "That's a beautiful idea. What will you call it?" "Margaret's Haven," I said. "A home for those who've lost theirs." Evelyn smiled. "Then let's make it official." The paperwork took weeks, but each signature felt like another piece of my mother's voice coming back to life. Donations trickled in from people who had read about my case and wanted to help. Journalists began referring to me, not as the daughter who sued her parents, but as the woman rebuilding from the ashes. One morning I received a letter from Donna, handwritten, trembling. "Lauren, I saw the news about your foundation. I'm proud of you. I know I don't have the right to be, but I am. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you find peace." I didn't know if forgiveness was possible, but for the first time, I didn't feel anger when I read her words. I felt pity. Understanding, maybe. A week later, I got a voicemail from Mia. "I didn't know what she was doing," she said quietly. "Victoria used us. I want to help if you'll let me." I didn't respond right away. But part of me wanted to believe her. Maybe that was what healing really was, not forgetting, but allowing yourself to see people as broken instead of evil. When the first group of women gathered inside the newly restored living room of my house, it didn't feel like the past anymore. It felt like the beginning of something new. Helen came up from Savannah, her cane clicking softly on the floor. Evelyn stood by the door smiling as the women shared their stories about husbands who drained their bank accounts, families who silenced them, lives they thought were over. At one point, Helen raised her glass. "To Margaret's daughter," she said proudly, "who brought the circle back to life." Everyone clinked their glasses, laughter and tears filling the room. I looked around, my chest full and light at once. The house no longer felt cursed or haunted, it felt alive. Later that night, when everyone had left, I stepped outside onto the porch. The sign we'd hung by the gate read Margaret's Haven, empowering women through truth and justice. The soft glow from the porch light illuminated the letters, and for the first time in years, I smiled without hesitation. I touched the locket around my neck, and whispered into the quiet night, "We did it, Mom." The wind stirred through the trees, carrying the faint scent of lavender, the one thing that still lingered from the old days. But it didn't hurt anymore. The house that once broke me had become the place where I found myself again. The morning air at Margaret's Haven was quiet, filled with the faint sounds of laughter from inside. The women were setting up for their first official community event, a workshop about rebuilding credit and independence. I stood by the window watching sunlight spill across the wooden floorboards. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. But peace, I was learning, never stayed long. Evelyn arrived just as I was setting down a tray of coffee mugs. Her expression was tense, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. "You need to see this," she said, pulling up a news feed. The headline froze me. "Founder of Margaret's Haven accused of fraud property ownership, under investigation." The photo below it was of me taken outside the courthouse weeks ago. My smile looked defiant then. Now it was being used to paint me as a villain. The article quoted an anonymous source, someone close to the family, claiming that I had falsified ownership records to steal my parents' home. "Victoria," I whispered, "she's behind this." Evelyn nodded grimly. "She's using her connections in the media to rewrite the story. She wants to destroy your credibility before the foundation can grow." I took the phone, scrolling through the article. The comments section was already filled with strangers, debating whether I was a con artist or a misunderstood daughter. The same story that had once earned me sympathy was now being twisted into scandal. "She's not just going after me," I said. "She's going after what Margaret built." "Then we fight back," Evelyn said. "But we do it smart." We gathered the team that afternoon, Helen, a few of the women from the circle, and a young volunteer named Sarah who handled social media. Everyone sat around the long wooden table, their faces determined. "She's banking on silence," Evelyn said. "She wants Lauren to panic, to go into hiding, to make the accusations look true. We're not doing that." Helen tapped her cane on the floor. "Then what's the plan?" Evelyn smiled tightly. "We're going to show her what truth looks like when it's loud." I watched them strategize: press conferences, legal filings, financial transparency reports. For a moment, I almost forgot I was the target of all this. The women I'd once seen as survivors were now standing up like soldiers ready to defend me. That night, as I locked up the house, my phone buzzed. The caller ID made my skin crawl. Unknown number. I already knew who it was. "Victoria," I said, answering without hesitation. Her voice was calm, syrupy, smooth. "You've made quite a mess for yourself, haven't you?" I leaned against the doorframe. "You should be careful. Lying to the press can backfire." She laughed softly. "Oh, I haven't lied. I just gave them what they wanted, a story. And people love to watch women tear themselves apart trying to look innocent." "What do you want from me?" "I already have what I want," she said. "Your family. Your reputation, and soon your silence." I felt my pulse in my throat. "You're not getting either." Victoria's tone dropped low and venomous. "Do you really think a few women and a lawyer can take me down? I built companies. I buried enemies. I've outlasted people stronger than you." "Then you should know," I said. "The ones who underestimate me always regret it." For a moment, there was silence. Then, the line went dead. I stared at the darkened screen, my reflection faint in the glass. The fear that had once controlled me was gone. In its place was something else: determination, cold and clear. 2 days later, we held the press conference. The main hall of Margaret's Haven was packed with reporters, cameras, and flashing lights. Evelyn stood beside me, calm and composed, her voice carrying across the room. "For weeks, false allegations have circulated about Lauren Brooks and this foundation. Today, we're releasing every financial record, every legal document, and every piece of evidence proving the truth." When it was my turn to speak, I stepped to the podium and took a deep breath. "My name is Lauren Brooks," I said, my voice steady. "For years, I let other people tell my story. My parents, my sister, even people like Victoria Calwell. But this," I gestured to the walls around me, "this is my truth. I built this home with my own money, my own hands, and now it belongs to something bigger than me." To every woman who was silenced, manipulated, or erased. You can twist the facts, but you can't erase the truth. Then Evelyn presented the documents proof of the forged trust, the fake notary license, and the fraudulent reactivation of Callahan and Tate under Victoria's name. She ended with a court ruling that had reinstated me as the sole owner of the property. Reporters murmured, scribbling furiously. One of them raised his hand. "Miss Brooks, what do you want to say to Victoria Calwell?" I looked straight into the camera. "I don't have to say anything. The truth will speak for me." By evening, the story had spread. News outlets ran headlines like, "Fraud Unmasked Businesswoman Exposes High-Profile Scheme." Photos of Victoria leaving her mansion surrounded by reporters filled every feed. The state attorney announced an official investigation into Caldwell Hospitality for fraud and money laundering. When I saw the footage Victoria shielding her face from the cameras, I didn't feel joy. I felt closure. But not everyone took the fall easily. That night, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was my mother. Her voice was frail, hesitant. "Lauren, it's your mother. I saw the news. Victoria's blaming us for everything. She says we signed those papers on our own." I closed my eyes. "Did you?" "No," she whispered. "But we let her. We were scared. She promised to fix things. I'm so sorry." Her voice cracked, the sound of a woman finally breaking under the weight of her own lies. "I know you can't forgive us, but please believe me when I say I loved you. I just didn't know how to show it." I didn't reply right away. Then I said softly, "You didn't lose me because of what you did. You lost me because you never trusted I could stand on my own." She started to cry. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not," I said. "But forgiveness isn't for you, it's for me." When I hung up, the silence that followed felt like an ending. A week later, Victoria posted a public video statement, her voice trembling, her makeup perfect. "I was betrayed," she said, tears shining in her eyes. "I only tried to help that poor girl. I didn't even finish watching." Evelyn did, though, and she laughed softly. Classic narcissist move. Play the victim when the empire burns. The court hearings moved fast after that. Victoria was charged with fraud, falsification of legal documents, and obstruction of justice. When the judge read the sentence, 2 years in prison probation and restitution for damages, Victoria's face went blank. For the first time, she had no power left to hide behind. As the gavel struck, Evelyn touched my arm. "It's over," she said. But it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like justice. That night, Margaret's Haven held its grand reopening as a registered nonprofit. The house was glowing, filled with laughter and music. Helen gave a short speech, raising her glass toward me. To Margaret's daughter, who turned pain into power. Everyone clapped. I smiled, a quiet one, the kind that comes from peace rather than pride. Later, as the night ended, I stepped out onto the porch. The lights of the house glowed behind me. The air smelled like lavender, again faint and familiar. I whispered to the stars, "Justice isn't revenge. It's the moment you stop needing it." The wind stirred through the trees, gentle and warm, and for the first time since that wedding, I finally felt free. The courthouse was quieter the second time I walked through its doors. There were no reporters this time, no flashing cameras or whispered rumors. Just the faint echo of my own footsteps down the long marble hallway. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was strange. I had won, the foundation was thriving. Victoria was behind bars, and yet I didn't feel the peace I thought I would. Justice had given me freedom, but it hadn't healed the wound beneath it. I stood outside the courtroom for a while, just looking through the glass doors at the empty benches where my parents had once sat. My father's bowed head, my mother's trembling hands, they were images I couldn't erase. I had spent so much time fighting for the truth that I hadn't stopped to wonder what came after. Revenge was loud, but healing, I was learning, was quiet. That evening, back at Margaret's Haven, the laughter of the women filled the halls. They were decorating for the upcoming charity dinner, stringing lights across the ceiling, setting up tables with fresh flowers. I watched them work, proud and a little distant, The house was no longer heavy with betrayal, it was full of new life, new voices. I'd built something my mother would have been proud of. Still, as the night grew quieter and the last guests left, the emptiness returned. That was when I saw the message blinking on my phone. A voicemail from Mia. I hesitated before pressing play. Lauren, her voice said softly, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but Mom's in the hospital, heart failure. Dad's been calling, but I guess you've blocked him. Please, if you can just come, she's asking for you." I sat there for a long time, phone in hand, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. A part of me wanted to ignore it. They'd chosen their side. They'd let Victoria manipulate them, they'd humiliated me, betrayed me, erased me. But another part of me, the part Margaret had given me, knew that walking away forever wouldn't heal anything. The next morning I drove to the hospital. The hallways smelled of antiseptic and coffee. When I reached my mother's room, the sound of machines hummed in the background. Donna looked smaller than I remembered. The woman who once commanded rooms with her voice now lay still and pale against the white sheets. My father sat beside her, his head bowed, his hand covering hers. When he saw me, he stood quickly, guilt written all over his face. "Lauren," he said quietly, "you came." I nodded but didn't speak. My mother stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering open. When she saw me, tears filled her eyes. "You're here," she whispered. "I am," I said softly, moving closer. She reached out a trembling hand. I hesitated for a moment before taking it. Her skin was cold, fragile like paper that might tear if I held it too tightly. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. "After everything I did, after everything we did," I swallowed hard. "You didn't give me many reasons to." She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I thought I was protecting us. But I see now I was just protecting my pride. I was scared of losing you, and I ended up pushing you away." Her voice broke, and for the first time in years I didn't feel anger. I just felt tired. "You didn't lose me," I said quietly. "You just stopped seeing me." For a long time neither of us spoke. The only sound was the steady beep of the heart monitor. Then she whispered, "Can you forgive me?" I thought about everything, every lie, every humiliation, every moment she'd chosen silence over truth. The word forgive felt too big, too heavy. But something inside me shifted. Margaret's letter echoed in my mind, carry it forward, not out of revenge, but out of love. "I don't know if I can forget," I said, my voice trembling. "But I don't want to hate you anymore." Her hand squeezed mine weakly, her eyes glistening. "That's enough," she said. When I left the hospital, the sky was painted in shades of pale gold and gray. I stood in the parking lot for a long time, breathing in the cool air. It wasn't peace yet, but it was the beginning of something close. That night I drove to a quiet nursing home on the outskirts of the city. My father had moved there after the trial, too ashamed, too weary to face the house or the town. When I walked in, he looked up from his chair, startled. "I wasn't sure you'd ever visit," he said. I held out a small envelope. Inside were the spare keys to 611 Willow Creek Lane. "I'm not giving it back," I said, "but I'm not keeping anyone out either." He looked down at the keys, then back at me. "You turned out stronger than any of us." I smiled faintly. "That's because I had to." He nodded slowly, his eyes wet. "Your mother's proud of you, you know. So am I. I just wish it hadn't taken losing everything to see who you really are." "Maybe losing everything was the only way to find myself," I said. We sat in silence after that, not as enemies, not even really as family, just as two people who had finally run out of reasons to fight. A few days later, I received a letter from the prison. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. It was from Victoria. "You won. Congratulations. You were stronger than I expected. But remember this, people like us don't get happy endings. We just learn how to survive them. Don't waste what you've built." I read it twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it inside Margaret's locket. Even villains, I thought, could be right about some things. At the end of the month, Margaret's Haven hosted a small ceremony to celebrate its official expansion, a new program dedicated to helping women recover financially after domestic or familial manipulation. Evelyn gave a short speech, her words full of quiet pride. Then she turned to me. This wouldn't exist without Lauren. She turned pain into purpose, and purpose into power. That's something worth celebrating. When it was my turn to speak, I looked out at the crowd, faces full of hope, strength, resilience. This isn't just a building, I said. It's proof that what breaks you can also build you. My story started with betrayal, but it ends here with forgiveness. Not because they deserved it, but because I did. Applause filled the room, but I barely heard it. My eyes drifted toward the photograph hanging on the wall behind me, Margaret in front of her gallery, smiling alive. It felt like she was still here, watching it all unfold. That evening, I stood on the porch long after everyone had gone home. The lights from the house glowed softly behind me, and the garden rustled in the wind. I touched the locket around my neck and whispered into the quiet, "I think I understand now, Mom." Justice gave me freedom. Forgiveness gave me peace. The stars shimmered above the roofline, and the air smelled faintly of lavender. For the first time since everything began, I didn't feel haunted by the past. I felt part of something bigger, something whole. The house that once represented loss had become a sanctuary. And I finally was home. The first rays of morning light slipped through the curtains of Margaret's Haven, painting golden lines across the wooden floor. I stood by the kitchen window, coffee in hand, listening to the laughter echoing through the halls. Women were setting up for our anniversary celebration, 1 year since we opened the doors, 1 year since the house stopped being a battlefield and became a refuge. Outside, the garden was in full bloom. The lavender Margaret once planted filled the air with a soft sweetness. I watched as Mia and Helen hung garlands on the porch, their hands steady despite the morning chill. A few feet away, Evelyn stood with a clipboard, orchestrating every last detail. She looked up and caught my eye through the window, smiling. I smiled back. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined this. I had stood in this same spot, surrounded by anger, betrayal, and loss. Now the house hummed with life, with hope. Margaret's Haven had grown far beyond what I'd dreamed. We'd partnered with local shelters, hosted workshops on financial independence, and helped dozens of women rebuild their lives. Every story was different, but they all began the same way, with someone finally saying, "I deserve better." I stepped outside, breathing in the crisp morning air. Mia waved from the porch. "We're almost ready," she called her, face bright with excitement. It still surprised me sometimes how natural her presence felt again. The walls we'd built between us had slowly crumbled over the past year. She'd started volunteering at the Haven a few months ago, handling accounting and donations. At first, it was awkward. Every conversation felt like walking on thin ice. But over time, small talk turned into laughter, and laughter turned into something that almost felt like sisterhood again. Evelyn joined me on the steps, holding 2 cups of tea. "You did it," she said simply. I shook my head. "We did it. Margaret started it long before I was born. We just carried it forward." She smiled. She'd be proud. The afternoon came quickly. Guests began arriving, women from the community, local business owners, volunteers, and survivors who'd turned their lives around. The house filled with chatter and music. Helen, elegant in a pale blue dress, moved through the crowd like she owned the place, greeting everyone with warmth and mischief. When it was time for speeches, Evelyn tapped her glass and took the stage. 1 year ago, this house was reclaimed not by lawyers or judges, but by courage, she said. "It's more than just a roof and 4 walls now. It's a symbol of truth and the strength that comes when we refuse to stay silent." Applause rippled through the room. She turned to me, and none of it would exist without the woman who gave it life, Lauren Brooks. I walked up to the front, my heart pounding. The crowd fell quiet. I took a deep breath and looked around the room. I saw faces I'd never seen before yet. Every one of them felt familiar, Each one carried the same quiet resilience I once fought to find in myself. This house was once a symbol of betrayal, I began. It was where I lost everything: my trust, my family, even my sense of who I was. But standing here now, I see that it was never really about losing. It was about becoming. Margaret built this place with love, and when I found it again, I realized love isn't about possession, it's about creation. You don't heal by holding on, you heal by letting go. I paused, glancing toward Helen, who smiled proudly. Forgiveness isn't something you give because someone deserves it, I continued. You give it because you deserve peace. The truth nearly broke me, but it also built me. What I inherited from my mother wasn't money or property. It was strength, resilience, and the courage to begin again. That's what this haven stands for. The room erupted in applause. Some of the women were crying, others nodding with quiet understanding. I felt Margaret's presence everywhere, in the laughter, in the lavender breeze, drifting through the open windows. After the speeches, music filled the room. Helen pulled me into a hug, her eyes glistening. You know, she said softly, Margaret always said her legacy wouldn't be a gallery or a painting. It would be you. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Then I hope I'm doing her justice. Evelyn joined us, raising her glass. You're not just doing her justice, you're redefining it. The celebration lasted well into the evening. As the sun dipped below the trees, casting a golden glow over the porch, I slipped outside for a moment of quiet. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of lavender and rain. The garden lights twinkled softly, the laughter from inside fading into a distant hum. I opened Margaret's locket and traced the photo inside, the one of her holding me as a baby. We made it, Mom, I whispered. You were right. Love is the only inheritance worth keeping. Behind me, Evelyn's voice broke the silence. You're going to miss your own party, I turned and smiled. I just needed a second. She leaned on the railing beside me. You ever think about expanding the haven, maybe? Open one in Charleston, finish what Margaret started. I laughed softly. Funny, I was just thinking that. Then it's settled, she said, her eyes glinting. Margaret's circle lives again. The thought warmed me. A year ago, my story had been about pain, betrayal, and justice. Now it was about continuation, about turning the things that once hurt me into something that healed others. When the guests began leaving, I stood at the gate, hugging each of them goodbye. Mia lingered, last holding her coat. You're really something, you know that, she said, smiling. So are you, I replied. Thanks for coming, and for helping. She hesitated, then said quietly, Mom's been writing again. Letters to you. She said she wants to see the haven when she's strong enough. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Then I nodded. When she's ready, tell her she's welcome here. This house was built on second chances. After she left, I stood alone in the quiet night. The house behind me glowed with soft golden light. The wind rustled the lavender, and for a moment, everything felt still. I closed my eyes and breathed it in. Peace didn't mean forgetting, it meant finally learning how to stay still in your own life without fear. My voice was quiet, but steady. The truth may hurt, but it's the only thing that sets us free. I looked toward the stars, smiling. And sometimes freedom means forgiveness. Then I turned to the camera, gentle, natural, almost breaking the fourth wall, but still part of the story. Maybe you've been where I was, I said softly. Maybe someone broke your trust and you're still wondering how to start again. If you found a piece of yourself in my story, tell me, would you forgive or would you walk away? I'd love to hear what you think. I smiled faintly, the porch light glowing behind me. And if this story spoke to you, stay with us. There are more stories here about justice, about family, about finding peace after the storm. Like, comment, subscribe, and let's keep building this circle together. The camera panned out slowly, the house glowing warmly against the night sky, the words Margaret's Haven, where truth finds a home illuminated in soft light. The music swelled gently, and as the screen faded to black, my voice lingered one last time. Some inherit houses, others inherit names, but the lucky ones, they inherit strength.